Welcome, everyone, those here on my screen, all beloved friends, and those who will attend by recording to the third day of the Climate Change and Consciousness Book Fair. This series is in honor of the books that have been spawned by the seedbed of collective original brilliance, visionary leadership that collaborated, took form, emerged from the first in-person gathering of climate change and consciousness in April 2019 in Northern Scotland. The people who have found one another, both at the event and subsequent to it, have become a global community of visionary leaders. And regardless of how often we see each other, how often we actually are face to face, our unified biofield is contributing consistently, beautifully, to turning around this horrific time. And I must sustain my faith in that. It's not a matter of how many times anything has happened. It's a matter of intention. It's an inner state. It's not a product of numbers. It's a product of a biofield of evolving, emergent, ever growing consciousness. And that consciousness is linked, is in kinship with the natural world. So in devotion and faith for this, we begin today's program, which features Jennifer Comeau, who was at the original event and who is a dear friend, a collaborator. I have to begin the introduction by saying she is a singer. I know her as a singer, a songwriter, and an activist. And her activism has taken a variety of forms and landed now as the author of The Inside of Me, a beautiful book for the littles, as she describes it, but also, and I know this about children's book, every children's book is also a book for every age, because indeed it is finding that child original brilliance, imaginative consciousness that all of us have, that is part of our visionary leadership. It looks often like it's this very erudite, sophisticated thinking, but actually true visionary guidance comes in the form of the original brilliance that all children have. So I'm hearing a slight funny noise. Are other people hearing it?
It's my dog barking.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to mute for a half a second.
Okay, all right. I just was wondering what that was. We have the furry creatures in the background here.
Actually, it's still happening. It's not your dog, Jennifer. It's more of a digital sound. How about Susan, if you were to mute, let me mute you just briefly. I'll do it.
Oh, it's gone.
Yeah, I think it was on Susan's end.
Okay.
Okay.
Something maybe in your connection, Susan, but don't worry over it.
Yes, nothing personal.
You know, just unmute whenever you want to speak. Don't have any hesitancy about that. So that really is my introduction to Jen. And she is actually going to launch us in this beautiful program, the third in this series. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jen Comeau.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I will share the story in a few moments about how I got to be at CCC 19 in Findhorn. And you know it well, Stephanie, but I think it's a story worth sharing. because it's about what happens when a heart aligns with its true calling. So anyway, in this place where everything meets, this now moment, I am inviting us to just land for a few moments and breathe together. Remembering the beating heart, remembering what brings us the peace and the connection, which is nature, the rest of the natural world. And we know there are visibles and invisibles in this incredible weave of the aliveness of Earth. And so if it feels good to you to bring the ancestors to mind, to bring, I immediately got chills, to bring the invisibles to mind, the elementals, and as one of the themes has been in the last few days, the fairy realms. I invite you to do so, to tap into that connection. And one or two more deep breaths. Come to presence here, in this place where everything meets. And so I'm lighting a candle as a reminder of the way that our ancestors gathered around the hearth, coming from woods, coming from coastlines, coming from huts or caves, and gathered around a fire to share stories and wisdom and counsel. And so may we do that here in the next little while together. And this is intended to be interactive. I'm deeply grateful to be here, Stephanie, and to be with friends, brand new and older, not old, to just create a weave about the magic of the rest of the natural world and how that can inform all of who we are and all of what we're bringing into the world, if we only let it. So I'm wondering about a little story. And the story takes place about 10 years ago when I was at a healer's intensive in Topanga, California with someone you may know, Dina Metzger. And Dina Metzger calls herself a village healer, although she's a global healer. And as Dina is wont to do, she will take a book at random from a shelf during the convening of a group of people who are simply being invited to bring forward whatever gifts and talents they possess in service to healing themselves, to healing from that place, in the same way CCC has always talked about that inside to outside healing. And she cracked open a book at random, cracked open to a page at random, and read a poem written by a woman about the last patch of green. And in that moment of time, contextually speaking, I was someone who was running everybody's everything. Corporate, organization, church, community, someone needs a project done, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And as Dina read the poem about the last patch of green, it was the story of a woman's deep mourning and grief and commitment to giving her life to save the last patch of green. And when I heard those words, I was broken open, because it was as if a lightning bolt came and said, this is yours to do. Not all that other stuff, not climbing everybody else's mountain, as I've talked about. This. And it occurred to me that in the past decades, I mean 5 of them, okay, I'm a slow learner. Those 5 decades, I had not remembered who I was. The little girl who loved to climb trees, who loved the slippery kiss of pollywogs from the pond, who loved to just lay there on the grass and watch the clouds and, oh, that's a dragon, oh, that's a lion. So when Dina read that poem, and incidentally, we cannot find that poem now. So this is the way that cosmos works, perhaps. All of a sudden, I realized that I had been living the wrong life. And so that was 10 years ago, and I've been on a journey ever since to find my way back to that which is what I have longed for. And it didn't occur to me that I had a homesickness for the rest of the natural world until I started to kind of chink the armor around my heart and finally let myself feel what it was that I was longing for. So I wrote a poem around then, and it happened to be at a writer's workshop. I began to remember that I loved writing when I was a kid. And I won English awards in high school. And so I remembered all of that person who I was. And I wrote this poem. The prompt was simple. At long last, ... So I wrote these words. And perhaps, Claire, if you were at all moved to sound after the end of this poem, you're invited to just, as you were moved or not. So at long last, ... At long last, I've come out of hiding. A half century is all it took. This is no crossroads. This is a launch pad. From a cliff, into a sea, up where the air is clear. I throw myself into radical uncertainty. Yet I hold on to something. I hold it lovingly to my breast. A secret bio with nouns like sanctuary keeper, way shower, and storyteller that tenderly dislodge other nouns like engineer, executive, project manager. I hold this holy thing as a launch pad and cast off everything else. There. And so, given our small group, at this point, I would love to get other voices in the room. And I just wonder if there is a moment or was a moment in your life where you realized that you had a homesickness or a longing. And if that realization somehow helped you shift your journey, your path. And I would love people's thoughts about that.
You ask a deep question. The quiet is very reflective of that depth.
I can share about that. I align a lot with what you're speaking about. And I think living where I lived before this was in Oregon, and had a computer job, and realized that I was very disconnected from the natural world, and felt growing up that I was connected to the natural world, and that that was very special for me. And now, and I mean, yeah, long story short, now I'm in Hawaii and have a farm, because I felt like I had to get away from the computer and be more in the natural world, that it made more sense to be with plants and animals all day. And I don't really know how it's going to work long term, but I'm trying. And it definitely is more important that we spend our time in nature than in this other computer world that we've created. So I definitely feel, yeah, I align definitely strongly with what you're saying, and hopefully have shifted my life to be more in line with nature, and the natural world. And it is challenging, but it is, I used to wake up every day and just feel like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? What is this? What is the, just feeling like it was such a waste of time. And I never really have those thoughts anymore. So that's good. That must mean I'm on some sort of right path, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that people pay attention to those feelings and continue to commune with nature and the beings that are in it.
Yeah. Paying attention to these
Yeah.
feelings. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Rachel.
Well, I could also speak to that, because I feel that connection to nature is always there, and if I go too far away, I'm always pulled back. And I was lucky to be mainly brought up as a child in the country, and I used to wander off and go to the woods, and I would just be intrigued by just following little paths. I had no, and just, I'd go down one, I'd go down another. And from one of the places I lived, I was in the very top of the house, and I could see out the window this beautiful carpet of bluebells. And I fell in love with bluebells then. And they've always been there. And I suppose my biggest resource is to use nature. So if I'm in a muddle, or I'm stressed, or if I'm anything, if I just go for a walk, the walking in a way will restore me, and I always come back feeling whole. And when I can, I sleep out, because I love just lying on the earth. And in my shiatsu work, I don't mind being inside, because I'm also feel like I'm outside as I'm working with the elements. And there's something I read recently that I'm pretty sure Stephanie wrote, and it was about that attachment. And we're obsessed with attachment to humans, and our attachment, our initial attachment. And something that I don't know whether it was what she wrote or how I read what she wrote, but that attachment to our mother, the earth, is the all important attachment. And I thought, actually, for me, that is the case. And I suddenly, I've never read that, never spoken it before, But to me, that had a deep resonance. It was like a language I understood, really. And it feels really important to me that with my grandchildren, my children, that I've helped them to connect. And I mean, I was lucky. I lived in the woods in the middle of nowhere for 40 years, and I got taught a lot there. And I would say that my biggest teacher is nature. So yeah, thank you for the question.
Always so good to hear your wisdom, Susan, and your authenticity around that as well.
To even try and answer your question is to write a whole book of instances of both connection and longing, because they sort of, one seems to feed the other a little. I was glad to hear you mention longing in terms of a longing to return, like to belong, to be aware of our place within, like within the organismness of life and nature. And one of the things that came to mind, there were two, but one that came to mind was the number of times I've stood on the edge of a cliff or the bluffs and felt this longing, because I could remember what it feels like to fly. And so that longing to be able to do that, to physically be able to fly again, knowing that something I used to be able to do in another time, in another way, in another life, on another planet, I don't even know where.
Wow.
And the slight kind of resigned acceptance that that's not, I don't get to do that way this time. I have to find other ways to travel. But that made me sad at times, you know, because that was a genuine longing. I also recall that I'm one of those people that has had a tendency to stare out of windows, gaze. And that in that there's a longing, mainly to be outside, to be in it, because I knew I was of it. So when I can actually be outside in wilder places, I just feel right. You know, it's the same feeling I have when I sing. It's like there's no edges anymore. And mind doesn't really have a job anymore. So it can just go away. And the sound of the wind evokes longing in me. It's so tactile. Yes, I thank you again for this question.
Well, I mainly want to reflect on Susan's words and just the memory of meeting Susan on a walk on a trail and encountering her. Just as she says, she is made whole by going for a walk in the woods. That's where I met her, was on a trail in a wooded, forested mother tree area. And that feels very special to me, and very special that the piece that I wrote about exploratory writing and very challenging writing, which I seem to do quite a bit of, but without really intending to be challenging, just offering a unique perspective that is counter to the commonly accepted perspective about attachment. The recognition that to name me as purely identified with human attachment, which is what psychology has done, I would be, and I accepted for so long the fact, I considered it a fact that I was poorly attached, and that was my problem. I had lots of evidence for that I was poorly attached, and that's why I had problems with people. And I lived with that for decades and decades and decades. And then the very recent realization that produced this writing, that that's absolutely not true. I was magnificently attached to an entirely different realm than the human. And that is how I became a healthy human being. So look at just the different frames that are produced and how the human nervous system recalibrates so that we can be aligned with the natural world as a result of this reorientation. I'm a neuroscientist, so I'm talking about a neurological reorientation from untruths, which was self-punishing, to truth, which is expansive, synaptically liberating. All of a sudden, the brain, the mind, perception is freed. And to see that that resonates with you, Susan, I can't tell you the nourishment of that.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you all for your words and the way you've held the question. And I'm struck by this idea, Rachel mentioned, being more in line with nature, because we are nature too. And Susan, your words about you fell in love with bluebells. I don't know if you have Sharon Blackie's book, The Enchanted Life, but at the very beginning, she goes on a walk. She does sort of two versions of a walk, one in which the person has a half an hour, they got their watch on, they're going to take a walk, but they're not going to stray from the trail because it's rainy and it's kind of muddy and they're feeling a little, and they're noticing, oh, it's kind of pretty out here. But their mind starts going into the meeting they were just from. And soon as they leave the trail, they cannot remember what they saw. And then she tells you a different story. The story of someone who has an experience, fully present, the place where everything meets. And as she concludes that, and this is just page 5 of her book, she concludes with when you leave the wood to go home sometime later, you carry bluebells in your lungs and crow in your ears. And I think that's that draws us when we go out into the natural world. And so with that frame in mind, and with that beautiful sharing, Claire, about, reminds me of Terry Tempest Williams' book, When Women Were Birds. A beautiful, beautiful book. And so when you talk about you've known flying, you have known flying. I have only known flying in my dreams. And wow, incredible. So there's 5 on my journey from there to here, and that awakening that said, wow, I've been taking 6 to 8 extra strength Excedrin a day to get through my stress headaches, being in this world of corporate manufacturing, pickling my liver because I was too empathic to actually deal with things, to this place of rooted in the all. There are 5 things I'm just going to briefly share. This is a quick, hopefully this will work. A few lessons, and we've touched on them sort of already. And I call this Wild Song, and it's a returning to life. So moving from that place of numbness and dying inside to this place of life. And the first thing that I will share is I had to realize that we need to slow down to nature's pace. The truth is, humans, we are operating at a pace that is not natural, with our overscheduled, overproductive, value placed on busy lives, value placed on doing. You're not someone unless you're all booked up. And that may seem really obvious to this very august group of, of people who've found their way to the deep well of what's possible in nature. I will tell you, that was quite a struggle to just get to that slowed down pace where when you're listening in stillness, everything's a part of the conversation. Everything. And so the crows are counting you in because you're there in the scene with them, a part of them. And the next lesson, I guess, I'm going to try to do it, see if this works. Zoom continues to have trouble with PowerPoint. I don't know if you guys know this, but I might have to stop share and reshare. Oh, it's up. Okay. And I think you touched on this, Rachel, a little bit. And even you, Stephanie, this idea, different frames. I had bought into the programming around that success means, I don't know if I'm frozen, but that's okay. I'll keep talking as long as you can hear me. Maybe you can't hear me. Let's see if I can.
Yeah,
I
you're
can hear
good.
You sound
okay.
fine. Everything
Okay.
looks fine, sounds fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
agree.
Thank you. This idea that success means status and money and minions and titles and stuff and a world that is so made me so empty inside. And I know that when you asked the question on Monday, Stephanie, around what is it that has you over and over again devoting yourself to CCC? To me, it's quite obvious that there's a different success measure than what we've been programmed to believe. Number of followers, money in a bank account, whatever it might be. And so part of this journey for me, because I walked away from a very lucrative career to be making 4 figures, not 6, is redefining success. So that's another just a little thought. And while I was at it, and as long as you can hear me, that's great. My computer's locked up. So I'm going to see what I can do to unlock that. Not sure if you can hear me.
Yep.
Oh, you still can hear me. Okay.
And we're seeing the slide Wild Song Lesson 2.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try to, yeah, my computer is completely locked up. So not sure what to do other than just share. The third lesson which I can't get to that slide, but it was about while I'm redefining things, I had to redefine what beauty looked like. Because the truth is I saw my empathic, sensitive side as thin skin in the corporate world, and it was not valued. And I saw weeds in my garden as unwanted, pesky elements. And so when I began to see that what I held inside, what those characteristics of myself were that were not valued in a different world, and I began to value them, I also began to value the wildflowers. And
I suspect her computer may need to restart.
Perhaps that's what's going on. And I'm sure she'll be back shortly. I am just soaking up this entire experience and feeling so deeply nourished by being in this circle and listening to Jen's insights. So I know that she'll be back shortly. And perhaps in this interval, we can share whatever is happening for us in response to listening to her. It's just spot on for me to hear this entire dialogue unfold. Any comments, Susan, Rachel, Claire?
Well, I'm struck by there's such a lot of beauty in what she's saying, in her reconnection and her distinguishing between where she is and where she is, if you see what I mean, in those two places. And each time she makes a move, there's actually much more abundance and beauty there. And it's just, yeah, it's just lovely just to hear that.
Yeah, I really agree. And I love the freedom and the invitation to just redefine everything. And I recognize the work involved with that, because we are inundated all the time with insistent and well-crafted and very flashy and visually appealing incentives to capitulate to definitions of success or definitions of what is valuable or what is going to be communicated well by a system that we basically reject. So we're caught always in this trap of being inundated by a message coming from a force that we have already identified as being colonizing and being manipulative and materialistic, when deep inside of ourselves, we have known throughout our lives that that is not in alignment with us, much less nature. And it's because it's not in alignment with us that we are aligned with nature. So we've been rejecting this abusive and apparently, from a materialistic standpoint, powerful inundation for as long as we've been alive. And that's why I wrote my piece about attachment, is the realization that this entire massive structure of Western psychology, it's not only incorrect, it's punitive to live with those strictures. And I had accepted the punishment. I'm a psychologist. I am a clinical psychologist. I am highly trained in these systems, and I was using them. I was operating out of those forms in my work with others. I was seeing whether or not the people were well attached or insecurely attached, etc., through a prism that was actually abusing me. Thank God I have stopped. but that's fairly recently. And
Mm.
of course, I feel horrible about what I've done to myself, much less what I have perpetuated in my work with others, and ask for forgiveness, which I have received because I can only honor my unfolding truth. But I am so glad that I can do the repair work. And I have to say, I am so grateful that I can write about it, and that that writing can then be of service to others.
Mm.
It's like we're coming out of a trance.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I feel what Rachel, my daughter, is experiencing is coming out of the trance of the definition of what it means to be okay, of what it means to be an acceptable human. I mean, who makes those standards?
Mm.
And of course, through climate change and consciousness and all my work, Tara approach, etc., I am regenerative health for a climate changing world. I am doing my best to reframe everything and empower others to reframe even the very definition of health. But I appreciate so much what Jennifer's saying. I need to hear this over and over again, that I mean, it's somewhat embarrassing to admit it, but I need to not feel like a failure, because here we are in a program, and look, it's the 4 of us, and hopefully it will soon again be the 5 of us. And does that mean I'm a failure? You know, Thomas Hubble has thousands and thousands and thousands of people in his programs, and excellent marketing and constant barrages of well-framed videos, etc. And here I am with the 3 of you and me. So I must be a failure. I must be doing something wrong.
You know, Stephanie, it's funny to hear you say that, because I've been in that fairly recently, and I ended up writing a poem to my mind, because, you know, I have a voice student that's she's got a really seriously harsh inner critic, and she's a trans female, and she's had that voice for decades, like eons. And so I talk with her about that, perhaps more than she actually even sings in our lessons, because it's the thing that's in the way. And I keep saying, you must talk to it. You've got to find out what this is. And then the other day I realized, oh, I must talk to it. I must find out, what are you doing here, mind? What is your purpose? How should I meet you? So yeah, that just comes to mind hearing you say that, and I understand. Welcome back, Jen. I'll just finish this thought and we'll hand it back.
Please.
But I am so utterly familiar with that voice's mantra, and it goes over and over and over. This idea of success and failure, Jen, that you've kind of prompted in your asking and in your sharing. But I realized it's an illusion. And the only way it gets to actually exist is by activating the chemicals in our body that then make it a sensory experience, and then it's real. But otherwise, it's just air. So there was something about that I'm still exploring, because it has to be turned into something of service, because we are not the only people. We're smart people. And if we have suffered with this, there are millions of others, as you say, in this trance, that are suffering in punishment. for not being successful from a commercial perspective, or whatever it looks like, however many followers you're meant to have, and so on. Back to you, Jen. Welcome back.
Thank you. Gosh, my computer's never locked up so much. So I think this is a lesson. You don't need the PowerPoint. Throw out the PowerPoint. Are there one or two words that you might want to just say? It sounds like, Claire, that your conversation evolved toward this new definition for success, new definition for inner and outer beauty, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we didn't conclude toward a new definition. We were kind of more voicing the old version and the way that impacts, and then our creative responses to that. But there is something I thought of when you were sharing your PowerPoint. So don't be 100% sure you shouldn't have been sharing. because that first image, I had a picture of you doing something that was about the weaving that you have wondered, that you said you'll share, about the where you were and the who you were, and then the here you are now and who you are now. And my question had been, I wonder why she did all those years in that, if this was her destination. And then I saw that picture of the two deer feeding on the grass. And I suddenly thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is the PowerPoint she's meant to take back to those corporations. Because there's something tangible in the sharing that you're doing that evokes the state that you wish to see in the world. And that is your place. Not the only one, and you may not look too excited about it, but they need you. They need to feel that, because it plants seeds. It just plants seeds. So that was my coming full circle back to you from what you shared so far.
Well, I'm really struck by the depth of the question. You know, if we just pause and really sit with it, I'm really struck by how deeply into ourselves we go. And as Claire was saying, how very likely it is that others are longing for permission to investigate in this way, because it's an unpeeling. It's very deep. It's not something you can do in a room. And this is again where I am doing my comparing of these programs that have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in them, and a program like this that has a few people speaking very intimately. In a room of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, I am not sure it would be possible to create the space where you could actually probe within yourself to see how these talents of what you must do that would define your right to be have embedded themselves into your flesh. And how painful and difficult but essential it is to extract those talents and free the mind and the body to follow a path of what I call original brilliance, but that might require a period of not having enough money. That might require a period of having to take a job you don't really want to take in order to put food on the table, or going without, or being in the place of feeling like you're not part of what's going on because you can't afford to be. We don't have enough money. You know, you might have to go through a period like that in order to be able to define who you really are, and have the courage to step into the world from that place. so a lot of what I see, even in the alternative world, the world being promoted all around us, resolving trauma, etc., by the big names, the big gurus in that field, who do have their hundreds and hundreds and thousands of followers. It feels that there is, within that context, still the talents are pushing people towards success. The talents are pushing people towards being acceptable, towards achieving. And my orientation, I know I'm a very busy person and I'm a very productive person, but I hope that you believe me. I'm speaking here to the people who sometimes criticize me for working as much as I do, that I am propelled by an inner creative drive. I mean, I'm actually not trying to achieve anything. I am trying to shape what is coming through me. And it is a lot of work, and it keeps me very busy night and day. I am awakened in the middle of the night when I don't want to be awakened with things that have to be written. And I am not incredibly successful by those standards. I am not. And I can't seem to do it any other way.
Yeah, feeding that inner creative drive. And I always want to add the word yet onto everything, right? When we say, I'm not that successful yet. And I mean, it might be posthumously or however you say that word.
I've pretty much given up on it, I'm not, I don't, it's like, it's not even that important. I like having enough coming back so that I don't feel depleted. And I don't feel depleted. Thank the goddess. I do not feel depleted.
There is something I wanted to say that came up, Stephanie, when you were talking about the fact that we were here and it's a small, intimate group and there's not hundreds of millions of people. And last night I was reading part of Dr. Emoto's book, and it was about water and our the amount of water in each of us, really. And it occurs to me that we might only be a small group, but what happens to us will, because we're water-based, it will go out to far and wide, just because we have that resonance. And to me, that's it's a very powerful thing. And just by being here and listening and contributing, we're activating that, and it's going out. We don't know where it's going, but it will be going out. And to me, that's that redefines success, really, because it's a consequence of us turning up and being here in a heartfelt, deep way. And I just wanted to put that in.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing up water. I don't know if you've seen or heard or read about Veda Austin's work with water, even deepening what Dr. Emoto has done. And I have the book on a shelf, but I won't go run. I tend to run toward my books. They're my best friends. So I won't do that right now. But I think, there's one, the lesson that I was almost on, which is the 4, which is there's something about trust that the universe will conspire to support the actions that come from your heart's deepest longing. And I just feel like maybe it doesn't look like, or the experience isn't quite what our expectations wanted it to be. And again, that's part of the, how do we decouple from the story, the ingrained story that we've been programmed. But there is something, and I know that me having gone to CCC was absolutely the universe conspiring, because I had no business being there compared to probably all the other people who had applied. But I promised to clean toilets, and and I asked for, out of the cosmic pool of infinite possibilities, I drew down that need, that longing, that desire. Please, if this is something that I am supposed to do as part of my noble contribution, not living everybody else's life and doing everybody else's project, and as mine, please let it happen. May it be so. And 20 minutes later, I got the yes from Stephanie. And so it is that second major shift. The first one was the last patch of green with Dina Metzger, and this one was 2019, 6 years later, asking and saying, this is my longing, and just letting it go and saying, this will be a sign. If the yes is yes, then it's a sign this is mine to step into this more climate activism, but as I call it, the non-angry climate activism, the beauty, the art, the inspirational catalyst, and that happened. So yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Well, I just wonder if you could then take that to the next step, which was my question, of writing The Inside of Me.
Yes.
Because that's another iteration of you as this non-angry activist. It's a beautiful iteration. Oh, you got there, and what this book expresses in terms of your activism. I'd love to hear you speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
And to the book itself.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually take off that settings. Please, gods of computers, don't make me lock up. Okay. So the book, The Inside of Me, because I always loved words, because I have the bardic tradition in my cells, my mother used to tell us stories, the Irish stories, and himself, her father, and the idea that words can conjure feelings and experiences. And I've just always loved that. I've always loved that. I'm not a good artist. Do not ask me to play Pictionary or draw on a wall or any of the things. I know Claire also is an artist. But crafting a string of words together that evokes something in somebody it's just been part of my upbringing. And so because I turned toward my natural longing for the natural world, to be in where I was as a kid, and because I love to write poems, I mean, they were awful, and 9 years old writing poems as a kid, I realized that this was coming full circle and honoring the innate in me that wanted to be expressed. Forget the spreadsheets, like, no, this was, and I've always loved Dr. Seussian rhymes and rhyming. So in this book, I'll just, I don't know if you want me to read it. It's very short. Would you like me to read it?
Whatever you would like to do, Jen.
Okay.
I really want you to. I'm interested in the book, but I'm also interested
the process.
in the process, because I believe that people need to hear about that. How do you manifest your activism, your passion? How do you manifest the inside of you so that it takes a form that you are happy with? And I would say that is one of the definitions of success, that what you produce is satisfying to you. And I will say that I live for that experience. To me, and I'm a hard critic on myself in this regard as well. But when I am able to create something that I feel, yes, this is what I want to say, this is what I want to communicate, and it's well done. That is the most calming experience that I have. Yes, fit into that expressive journey.
So I think ultimately, in the middle of this book is the question that I had for myself as I started going out more and more into nature, slowing down, listening, being a part of that weave. This particular page in the book asks the penultimate question: how can it be that the inside of me is now easy and breezy and all sparkly from being in nature? And then the answer, of course, there's just a page of just lusciousness from this incredible illustrator, Susie Linden. And then comes the answer. Yes, it is true for me and for you. However we feel and whatever we view is a mirror that shows what inside of us glows. And so I think for me, this book is a homecoming to the realization that when I gave myself the freedom to not have to conform to what the rest of the world dictates, when I gave myself the freedom to heal to receive the natural world as healer, teacher, guide, that the inside of me hopped more and more toward easy, breezy, and sparkly. And I began to align with, as Rachel said, the life force, aligning with nature, the life force. And that's why I decided to do this book, because I hope that others won't take 50 years to realize. And of course, all of the science is catching up in terms of the benefits of vitamin N, being in nature. And what I did ask about in terms of with the illustrator, I said, I want humans in the scene as if they are part of the mycelial network, not featured the way in some children's books. There's, Jimmy the whatever, and it's all about Jimmy going through his world. That I wanted the humans to be. And so she just rendered these incredible scenes where these three humans who we don't quite, we don't really ever know their names or their whatever, they are in the scene, in the weave, in the mycelial network, and surrounded by wildlife, as though and because that's really where we belong. I hope that answers the question. Don't know.
It does. It does. Beautifully. Beautifully. And I have a sense of the power of this book, that for the young people who experience it and the adults who share it with them, there's an opportunity to step deeper into the web of life, to step more. And when you say in nature, that we heal in nature, what I see is a baby in utero. That's what I see. We are in nature as are in utero, because the earth is our mother. And that's the whole phrase, in nature. That is, to me, my concept of original brilliance and embryonic intelligence. We allow ourselves to experience ourselves as embryos, which we still are, because embryo means one who unfolds. That's really what embryo means, one who unfolds. And embryos unfold by their own initiative. It is the life force within the embryo that unfolds. And of course, what mother eats and the purity of the environment and the emotional dynamics, that all plays a role. But we know from those beings that have been born fat and big and healthy when mother had poor nutrition, that there's something else going on in addition to what mother eats or what environment she's in. And that something else is really the centerpiece. It's the life force of the embryo. And that life force doesn't stop once you're big. It's still there. And that's what it means to be in nature. We are in our embryonic self. And it's a difficult thing for me to communicate to people, because people think, she's really gone off the deep end saying that we're still embryos. It's like, that is so weird.
Wow, I love. So you said the true definition for embryo is unfolding, did you?
Yeah, that's embryos are beings unfolding.
Wow.
Because that is, an embryo ignites its own cellular proliferation. So embryonic life is absolutely nonstop proliferation, cellular development, and a kind of sorting process that includes apoptosis, or the shedding of unnecessary or superfluous cellular material. So the embryo is constantly doing that. It's nonstop movement. And it does not end once we're born. It may change in speed, for instance, but it is ongoing. And it is ongoing until we die. Then it does stop. But not until then. And it's difficult for people to accept or reclaim that magnitude of self-initiation. You don't need any psychedelics or anything to get in touch with that inside yourself. So
I just wrote, maybe this can be a poem or a song or a chant. Inside this place where everything meets, there is a great embryonic unfolding.
Oh, I love this. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And that's what I feel like you're communicating in your book. That's what I see when I see people experiencing this book, which I don't have a copy of, and which I would look forward to seeing, and I will.
I would love to send you one.
I'll send you Rachel's address and mine.
Yeah.
And I see it as opening up people to their embryonic intelligence within the womb of the natural world. That's where we are most likely to get back in touch with that somatic experience that we can remember. And that's, of course, where people just look at me like I'm crazy. It's like, how could you possibly remember that?
Claire remembers how to fly.
That's,
I mean,
Yeah.
I'd rather be called crazy than be in counter and be countercultural and be in this world. But I digress, and I know we're sort of heading out. I'd love to have everyone just a few last words or sentences, or just what strikes you here, day 3 in this lovely journey of and I'll say not only authors, but I know Claire has released at least 1 or 2 albums, CDs, whatever.
Oh, yes, more than that. Yeah.
Since CCC
Yeah.
19, you know, I don't know how many since then, but it's about, you know, the artists continuing to feed that which they are called to give life to. So, yeah. So, yeah.
I mentioned to Stephanie a few days ago, or maybe even yesterday, that I needed to start adding filmmaker into my description, because one of the things that I do, and your presentation on sharing today, I mentioned that it was having the similar effect of kind of creating the sensational environment that you wish to see more people experiencing in the world. But all the photography that I do and the short videos that I take and the time I spend in sort of faraway places where there's less people, I put them together, and there's something that I even get from watching them. They don't necessarily have spoken word. One of them is purely the sounds of the environment. And yet there is something that happens when I watch it. So these gifts of sort of impulse that we have to generate something, and it might just be a conversation, you know, it doesn't have to have a permanence to its presence physically, but these things can travel through us as communities and create ripples, you know, just like the wind and the tides do with the water, and everything's always changing. So we can't really over or underestimate what impact we're having. And that's the part where we go crazy if we try. So we have to remember, oh, that part's none of my business. It is my business to make sure I'm in the center of what feels true for me to be focused on right now, doing right now, generating right now, in an infinite way.
I look forward to watching some of those, Claire. How about Susan? I know it's late for you, so.
You're still muted, Susan. Oh, there you go. You're still muted, Susan. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. I feel totally blessed to have arrived here tonight and share this with everybody. Yeah, I just feel really highly gifted, and thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Susan, for staying up so late and for being here with your presence. Always a blessing. Rachel, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I was here throughout the whole program here. I just had dogs that I had to yell at occasionally, so I figured it was easier to just be off camera. But it was really nice to hear from all of you, and yeah, it's nice to be connecting with women who are committed to living from your true vision. And it's challenging. I'm in a challenging time in life. So it is, I'm kind of balancing, figuring out how to do that.
Mm.
And like Stephanie mentioned, going through times of not having enough. Okay, bye, Claire. I also have something in 2 minutes. I'm meeting with a new therapist to try to figure out my life.
Oh, exciting.
Mm.
That's great.
Yes.
Bye-bye, everyone. Sorry, but I'm actually hosting this other one, so I should be there first.
Thank you,
Okay, bye, Claire. Nice to
Bye-bye.
meet
Thank you
you.
so much, Jennifer. It was
Thank
beautiful.
you. Mm.
I'll be in touch very soon, Claire.
Lovely. Bye, Stephanie.
Sorry,
Bye,
there
Susan.
weren't
Bye,
more
Rachel.
people here.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry there weren't more people here, Jennifer. We talked about that a little bit when you were gone, and so I want you to know it was really nice to hear everything you had to say. It really meant a lot to me, and I'm sure the recording will be shared. And as Claire had mentioned, I think you were here when she said this, but the intention will disperse larger than just our field. And yeah, so it's important to hold these things in our hearts moving forward in life, and I will try to continue doing it. I don't know how, but yeah, and that's so nice of you to offer to gift me a book. I'm happy to buy one. However it works, though, we would love to have it in our home
Yes.
here, and I just think it's such a special thing that you've created. So thank you for being here and dealing with all my emails.
Yeah, and I think I know you have to leave, so just if you can send your mailing address, all of you, and I'll follow up with Claire as well.
Okay,
I'll send you one. So
sounds good. Thank you so much.
wonderful.
Good luck,
Yes.
sweetie.
And
I love
thank you, Stephanie, just as we near to a close, for convening us all this week. Way back in whenever it was July or whenever the impulse came, October seemed so far away, and sure, we'll have lots of time to get lots of people there and all this. And I just have to trust that it's the constancy. It's the constancy of purpose. And that's immeasurable. So I thank you for the convening, and I know you have to leave, Rachel. So, and look forward to tomorrow and hearing what, I forgot her name already.
Trista Hendren. Yeah.
Trista, yes.
Well,
So you might
today
just
this was deeply nourishing for me, and just inspired by your redefinition of success. I'm going to go with, for me, this was a very successful experience because I could relax and enjoy it. I didn't feel like I had to really do anything. I could just absorb the delight of being with people I love. I have to say, it's really special for me to be with Susan again. I feel like I haven't seen her in so long. And this may be my own fantasy, but I could imagine, Susan, you could write a children's book in a similar vein of Jennifer's. And I want you to know, I am a huge champion of children's books. As I was raising my children, I had probably the biggest collection of children's books outside of any bookstore. And people would say, you don't have to buy all these books, you can just get them from the library. And I would say, no, I have to have them. They were as much for me as they were for my children. But I read constantly to my children, probably more than they ever wanted. And I believe in children's books as having the capacity to change the world. So there you have the wild visionary leadership that lives in me in a very stubborn way. So I completely enjoyed being with all of you, those who are now off the call, those who will be on the recording. It was deeply settling for my nervous system to be with everyone. And tomorrow we will have Trista Hendren, but not in person. because it's too late for her in Norway. So she's made a recording for us, but I will be reading from her incredible assembly of books that I have the honor of contributing to. And Claire, who is becoming a co-convener of this series, will join me, and you will be able to experience another poetry and music event. And I will publicize this. We have a recording that I will gift everyone with of Trista Hendren, who is a remarkable and exquisite human being and an incredible supporter of what I am calling the new feminism. This is a new theory that I've developed. What is the new feminism, the new iteration of feminism, which is a trauma-informed feminism? I will speak somewhat to that tomorrow, but the centerpiece will be this library of books that Trista Hendren has mothered into the world. We'll be hearing from her via recording. I will be reading from those books, and Claire Hedin
Wonderful.
will be my musical and sound. So I welcome you tomorrow. It'll be a rich experience. And I thank you deeply, Jen, for the insight of me and for your beautiful facilitation today. See you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.